All right, welcome back, Christy with the Y. We're so excited to have you joining us for the Nice Longer Remote Learning Series. Just like before, these sessions are created to provide you as an educator an opportunity to extend and refine some of your practices with engaging students on remote or online learning. Showcase some high impact highlights some ways to facilitate remote or online learning. Although a lot of this is gauged to online, remember this is also applicable to your brick and mortar classroom if we do return to school, which we are hoping for. Again, my name is Brandy Wilson, and co-presenting with me today is Christy Snyder, and we also have Mr. John Payne with us. Christy and I are both instructional coaches with the Nice Longer Foundation.
Christy, I'm not going to really go into Zoom much. Just remind you that, your microphone, it can be on or off. There's not a lot of people here, so background noise, is probably not going to be that big of an issue. Thank you for letting us see your face. You do have the option to turn off your video or to leave it on. We hope you'll leave it on if you can. And remember that little chat bubble, that's where we'll be doing some of our reflection in the session today. So if you'll use your chat feature and you can just move that participant window around however that works best for you. All right, so we have arrived at the last session of our learning arc. Our learning arc has been based on the AMLE article, This We Believe, that posits education for young adolescents should have 4 central attributes. It should be developmentally responsive, challenging, empowering, and equitable. So our 4 weeks of mini sessions have expounded on how each of these posits applies to virtual classrooms in regard to building community and relationships in a virtual setting. Please remember that our deep dive will be September 29th. It will be focused on all 4 posits, but still grounded in the building community and relationships vein within the virtual classroom. But today we're going to focus on session 4, supporting an equitable curriculum while building community and relationships in a virtual setting.
Today in our session, you're going to gain an understanding of how to provide and support virtual learning that is equitable for all of your students. And also we're going to identify some possible barriers to equity that would be possibly seen within the classroom and explore some empathetic strategies for overcoming some of those barriers. You'll notice here too on the slide we have an agenda. This agenda is not based on the time of the day it is now, but on how we will spend our 30 minutes together. And also there's that optional continued conversation, which you have been a part of before, Ms. Christie. However, we'd like to let you know that because of that optional continued conversation, if we were to go over 5 minutes or so to honor your time, we'll make you aware of that when we come closer to the end. Okay.
AMLE states that an essential attribute of successful schools is that education must be equitable. Educators must create a classroom environment in which all students can learn. Students come to the classroom with a myriad of differences, and it's in middle school that many of these differences become more apparent. Middle schools must provide an environment that recognizes and celebrates these differences and creates equitable opportunities for all students. Excuse me. The move to online instruction creates a larger divide for equitable education. While most students have access to computers or smartphones, some students lack the crucial time, flexibility, and resources that others have. Some may not have dependable internet connectivity. And in some families, there's only one computer or smartphone and it has to be shared. In some cases, students have increased responsibilities at home and may even have to help younger siblings with their schoolwork. Some may even have ill family members. Of the 4 AMLE essential attributes, creating equitable instruction online provides the greatest challenge. The pandemic and the accompanying changes to teaching and learning cause us as educators to be more attuned and empathetic to the diverse needs and challenges our students and their families are facing. This is a time that calls for maximum flexibility. Teachers are working hard to provide a variety of ways to engage students in challenging learning, communicate with students and families, and allow students to produce and submit assignments through diverse means. Great middle school teachers are understanding, empathetic, and flexible. The challenges of teaching online during COVID-19, the pandemic of COVID-19, have reaffirmed for educators what they value and has provided valuable insight that will help them and other teachers meet the needs of young adolescents in a rapidly changing world.
So much information in that slide, Christy. So when teaching virtually, how can we equip ourselves to offer more equitable instruction to help bridge that divide? And we know we cannot be fully prepared for every scenario that could possibly come our way this coming year. But one thing that we can for sure keep in mind, that all of us, every one of us, in a few short months have experienced a global pandemic and a massive racial reckoning within our country. The thing is, though, we've experienced and are processing those circumstances in very different ways. However, these events have brought equity to the forefront of education, and it is now a hot topic. It is our ethical responsibility then, now to approach decisions, interactions we have with our students in nuanced and responsive ways, rather than a one-size-fits-all model. And that's easy to do when we're online because we can put something up in our Google Classroom and move along. So one way to offer equitable instruction to our students is by being reflective of our own practice within the classroom. Our goal today, Christy and I, are to share with you a few tools that you could use going forward to help you explore maybe some of your biases, or explore how you could offer a more equitable classroom or instruction to your students. So we have a questioning framework that we're going to be looking at that you're able to use after teaching or in pre-planning before you present a topic, in hopes that you're going to be able to dig deeper into leveraging that student community. When considering equity questions and the reflection of our practice, we should remind ourselves to recognize, remember, acknowledge, know, understand, share, ask, and apply to the scenarios within our classrooms, to the lessons and policies that we put in place. Using that questioning framework and putting into practice can help build a sense of community, offer students unity and a safe harbor. And of course, we know that's going to produce a more productive learning environment. So let's briefly address a commonly asked question that we're hearing right now. How is asking students to have their cameras on during class online connected to equity? A common response that we have to this question is we want to be sure that our students are engaged, that they're paying attention. So thinking about that question, let's look at it through an equitable lens using that questioning framework. So when considering any scenario, we need to recognize our own limitations. We need to know that even the most engaged teacher or administrator cannot recognize and plan for every inequity, which we just spoke to. While knowing this is true, it's equally, though, important to think about it at the beginning rather than at the close of a discussion or at the close of planning. That deep thought enables us to keep that ongoing learning available and to the forefront of what our biases may be. That includes maybe multiple points of view and decisions. And so because of that, we're going to have an atmosphere of openness to learning more. So let's recognize today that requiring students to have their cameras on could be inequitable.
Let's remember that we're in each other's homes without an invitation, without permission, or without even so much as a conversation ahead of time. For many, a home is a private place from work, school, and life outside of its doors. Yet virtual learning thrusts teachers, leaders, co-workers, and peers into this private space. And with a focus on content, curriculum, meetings, delivery, and engagement, the boundary between home and outside of home quickly becomes blurred with little to no regard for how this boundary crossing impacts the environment. Especially during last year's abrupt closures, we often missed the step of discussing how we enter each other's spaces. It's exposing to students, to parents, and teachers. And it does create this sense of vulnerability.
For sure.
Seeing each other in each other's spaces can also give a false sense that we know each other better than we actually do, which may be true of some and is probably more true for those whose circumstances at home are not a source of discomfort, embarrassment, or judgment.
So along with recognizing and remembering, we need to acknowledge and consider the experiences of all stakeholders. Think of that student who may be turning off the camera because she's watching her siblings while her mom, who is an essential employee, is at work. Or think about the teacher who doesn't feel supported at school for being an open gay man and whose home is his place to be, as of course, his authentic self and for him to feel safe. But now the kitchen has turned into his office. And if his husband or spouse walks by in the background to get a snack, how should he feel about that? What about the student who is attending a private school but on scholarship? They have that financial aid and they don't want their classmates to know. They don't want their classmates to recognize their socioeconomic status. Remember those students too who have insecure or absolutely no housing or computers or Wi-Fi.
If we require students to have their cameras on, we need to know that this may leave them feeling exposed, and it could therefore raise their anxiety. Increased levels of anxiety make learning, teaching, parenting, and decision-making much more difficult. Think about the normal school day when we're present in our brick and mortar schools. Even when students are physically in our classrooms, we aren't always able to tell if they're paying attention.
You know, we also need to be able to understand that right now, having cameras on or off is not the most critical factor in this scenario. It's a decision schools can make universally and quickly to have a uniform protocol if they choose to do so. To actually be equitable, we need to be asking ourselves other questions like, how do we or how should we talk about equity within our school or classroom? How do we create space for school community to share their experiences comfortably? And how do we listen to and respond to those experiences of our school community members?
We need not to forget our most important stakeholders. We should ask students for their constructive feedback and opinions. Share with your students your desire to teach them with a foundation of equity and partnership. Mm-hmm. Create student communication avenues such as surveys, emails, and even time after class to share their individual needs.
And to piggyback on what Chrissy just said, we need to ask. We need to ask students how they could demonstrate their engagement with cameras on or off. How can they, or schools and organizations, pay attention to those boundary crossing lines that occurred during this time? And what might we do to be more culturally aware and sensitive and responsive to ways that has worked and to ways that hasn't, based on their student, parent, and coworker interactions or feedback? So teachers can ask students what is working for them and what isn't working for them within the classroom.
And finally, we need to apply all our findings from self-reflections, from student feedback, and from peer, coach, leader support to our instructional plans and leverage our results to ensure equity for all of our students.
So that questioning framework offers 8 questions to be self-reflective. So using this same framework, we would like you to consider a possible barrier within your classroom. We've offered 2 here, you'll see on the slide, student internet connectivity and/or student assignment submission. But we don't want to limit you. There may be a barrier you're experiencing now or one you foresee as a potential divide. So feel free to use this same technique on one of those barriers that may resonate with you more. But to engage in our thinking, we're going to be using Padlet to dig into these equity issues. And if you're not familiar with Padlet, we wanted to offer you a couple things in reasons why we chose Padlet to use on our session today as our online platform. Padlet offers choice. You can respond by adding text, by adding images, or adding a multimedia component. They have content filtering available on Padlet. It's available across all devices, laptops, iPads, desktops, even phones. It has accessibility features to offer a strong equity base, such as transcription. It also, like we had just said, offers students the ability to use a photo or a voice recording rather than having to write an essay or a sentence if that's not possible. It also offers asynchronous opportunities, which I think is huge when we're online. Students can revisit content and/or discussions that were missed, and if they weren't available to be in the class synchronously, they can go back and still feel like part of the conversation. Those students with writing or processing challenges, like we said before, can do a visual representation or use a multimedia meme or GIF or something along those lines. And I think that also offers the opportunity for students that social emotional learning for them to be able to express themselves. But though this is an online tool, Padlet is not a cure-all. We can use it when teaching remotely because of its robust, diverse accessibility features. And that's what we've decided today, but it's not the end-all be-all or the answer to all equity issues. I'm going to be dropping a link into our chat box. This link is actually going to take you to our Padlet. Christy is going to share some directions and a quick little tutorial on using this tool as it applies to our session today.
All right, Christy, you'll notice here on the left that we're giving you just a little bit of instruction. You're going to be asked, just like you said, to choose a barrier to apply the questioning framework to. You may choose student internet access, student assignment submission, or if you have a personal barrier or something that you anticipate might be a struggle with equity when your school year starts very soon, I guess next week, you're welcome to choose that as well. Just like Brandy said, you can respond in a variety of ways. You can respond with a link, with words, with a drawing, a GIF, a meme, picture, just whatever you want. We're asking that you respond to at least 3 of the criteria from the questioning framework, and they are bolded here on the left for you so that you don't have to remember those. I guess that's it. Do you have any questions before we let you get started?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, we're going to give you about 5 minutes. If you need a few more, that'll be okay, but we'll start with about 5 minutes.
All right.
How's that music, folks?
It's good. It's not too loud. Oh, it's getting louder.
All right, that concludes our 5 minutes. We hope that you were able to get a feel for the Padlet and the questioning framework. I love your no. Very good students may have anxiety because they know how to do the work, but do not have the means to turn it in on time. I think that is huge when it comes to student internet access, and that image is the best. Also, understand the teacher and students can come to an agreement on how to show engagement during a lesson. If the camera cannot be on, how can the students show they are listening and into the lesson? They can comment, add reactions. I think use the chat box. I think even for students who come in asynchronously, if you have an activity like a Padlet or some way in which that they can participate asynchronously, you can always go back and say, okay, Christy was engaged during the lesson. Regardless of her being synchronously with us, she did come back and see others' feedback.
Yeah.
Ooh, I love this. Acknowledge. Just because something seems obvious to us, such as internet access, does not mean that everybody has the means to it. Everyone is in a different circumstance. Students who may have had access last year may not be in the same financial situation this year because of all the unemployment caused by the virus. That's huge. Economically, how this has affected us, I think is really a touch point on showing equity. And I also want to say that just because they have access doesn't mean that they have the means to use something. And I think sometimes we're lacking that knowledge in the fact that just because we give you or offer you a Chromebook or a tablet or an iPad, you have access, but that doesn't mean that you know how to utilize that product or any platform that we ask of you. Thanks so much for responding to those. Those are great thoughts. Uh-oh, Christy, you're muted.
Well, I was just talking away. I'm so sorry. In regard to what you've learned about equity today, we would like to ask you to reflect with us using the 3 A's protocol. The purpose of this is just a real quick, low-key way to build community in your classroom. And the purpose is just to kind of create space to reflect on what we've done today together. So in just a minute, we're going to ask you to please share in the chat one of these 3 A's, either appreciation, and that would be something that you appreciated about our learning community today. You could also offer an apology, maybe, for something, if there's something for which you want to apologize. Or you could offer an aha, which is kind of like a light bulb moment. So I'll quickly model this for you. I appreciate how reading your responses in that Padlet really helped to deepen my understanding of just all the different facets of what it takes to make, student assignment submission or internet connectivity equitable for kids. I apologize that I left myself muted and talked to you and I thought you could hear me, but you couldn't. My aha moment is just kind of, as I look at that Padlet and I look at you all laying down your thoughts, many of those thoughts are mine. And so, we're going through this really, really hard time, but, and I know we're all experiencing it in different ways, but we are learning to bridge a lot of the same barriers. And I'm really grateful that we have this type of community that we can discuss that in. All right, so I'm going to be quiet here and I'm going to ask you could just choose one of the A's to share in the chat, please.
Yes, some of the best students can be deterred from being involved in the class or lesson because of embarrassment or the fear of judgment.
Yep.
And sometimes there's been situations that educators have shared where just the, I guess, ignorance in the sense of they don't know how to use certain platforms, like family members, not so much the kids, and how parents have actually embarrassed the kids more so than the kids have done something for themselves, like stepped out shirtless or something like that, because the kid may be looking at a different, the screen may not be reflecting the actual meeting, but as we know, you can still see the things going on within the house, even though you can't see everyone else at the time. And some situations and scenarios have discussions have come about regarding those things.
But I think it's kind of like when kids are at school, I think everybody puts on a face, and then when you are at home, you can't really do that as well.
Right.
I think that's gonna struggle. I mean, that's gonna cause a lot of kids to struggle.
Dawn, I love your thought. We do take for granted that everybody just has what we have.
Yep.
And that's easy. Just like Christy in your Padlet response when you were talking about your acknowledge response, that hit home with me.
Yeah.
And I think too, when it comes to that access, like I want to apologize to students for being ignorant in my thoughts when I say I've given you access to things, but you may not know how to use it.
Yeah.
Or you may be familiar with what we did in class, but there was always someone there where if there was a snag come up, or like my 6-year-old will often say, Mama, I need your help, because she's clicked something and it's taken her Google Meet off, and all she has to do is go to the tab, something very simple. But when you're not familiar with that, you have no clue. So you're lost for the rest of the time. Just those, that would be one of my apologies too. Just things like that go along with taking that for granted and thinking that offering access also was equitable in the sense of you do have what we have.
And like here, some of the students, you just assume that because I just always assume that because students are, way younger than me, they're way better at technology.
Yep.
I assume that younger people are they're all about it, but not everybody has that same situation. We teach a very diverse population, and it's not always the case.
Christy, I have three kids of my own, and they're really good students. And when they went home back in the spring, I realized they didn't have a clue how to check their email, send in the email. I mean, just something so simple. And they're straight A students.
Oh yeah,
have a clue.
But they probably didn't do that every day, though, did they?
They never did it before. They can do it well now, but they.
Oh yeah, it's just like we don't think anything about it because we send emails, 50 a day. So
yeah.
Well, and then you had your buddy where you could just say, hey, how do I do this again? Or where do I go? Like you have that support. You just turn around and they're there.
They are.
You have that immediate support right there to help and assist you. Your own little help desk.
Yeah. Well, another apology I have, Christy, is that we've kept you longer than we said we would. I do apologize for that. We'll move on in case you need to go.
Some ways that we've modeled equity today, Christy, is, we gave you the option also of having your camera on or off or your mic on or off. We offered you other ways to respond to where you didn't have to do so verbally, but you could in the chat box. We gave you the agenda so you could kind of look it over, and if there were times that you needed to step away and not be as engaged, you could choose those times specifically. And we also were reflective on our practice and offered you a questioning framework, which is another empathetic strategy that you could use, as well as a 3A's reflection, especially having that apology in there to help build that classroom community. And then Padlet, which we discussed some of the ways that Padlet was showing equity online. But again, it's not the cure-all or end-all be-all, because there are also those students that cannot facilitate an online environment regardless of having computers.
All right, so this completes our 4 mini sessions in our learning arc. Again, we do hope that you'll join us for our deep dive session on September 29th, where we will explore the 4 central attributes of building community and relationships through virtual learning. We're going to ask you in that session to analyze a scenario and then apply your understanding of these 4 posits by making some changes to several classroom examples to ensure instruction is developmentally responsive, challenging, empowering, and equitable. We hope that you can join us. Remember that our session materials can be found on our webpage. Just click View Materials.
And also, just as we have done in the other sessions, we would love to hear your feedback. So if you would do a survey, it takes about 1 minute, an evaluation of the session today. Mr. John will be dropping that in the chat box. We would love to know your thoughts on the session. We are always looking for ways to improve and be better. And we're also looking at future planning for topics that you would like to have discussed in personal learning. And just so you know, we are very intentional about our feedback. All those comments we look over as a team and plan speaking of people's interests and what works best, plan accordingly.
All right, so this marks the end of our presentation. Please feel free to sign off if you need to, or you are welcome to stay on with us for a continued conversation about equity.
Filling the survey out.
John and Christy, I'd like to fill out the survey in reference to you all and just tell you how great you did. And Christy with the Y as a participant, excellent, excellent job.
This girl has been with us through every session, John, and
Really?
usually
Okay.
one. She deserves, like, I don't know, a star or crown.
Candy bars, anything you can mail her, John, send it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my.
Classroom set of earbuds or something.
There you go. Yeah.
Even ask.
Bunch of webcams or a laptop
Yeah.
or something.
Oh, yeah.
We can't hear, I can't hear you. Can you guys hear her?
No, I cannot.
She's not muted. Yes, she's
Nope, can't hear you.
not. Mm-mm. We could earlier.
Yeah. So your prize might be a new microphone.
Let me think here. Let's see.
Now you are muted.
Try turning your camera off and back on. You know, just go down to the little stop video and then start video. I don't know if that will work or not. It might. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. No.
No.
Mm-mm. No.
Goodness, well that is odd because it worked and then it didn't.
Yeah. There's not much to do on this end, unfortunately.
All right, what about now?
There we go.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
There you
Okay.
are.
There you go.
Okay. I think it switched off of
Ah, the
the other,
microphone. Okay.
but now
All kinds of tricks for when your kids show up.
I know, right?
Yeah.
It is, it's like panic. You're going to be that lady in the back.
I don't know how to make
Do
it
not do so.
But no, I just wanted to say thank you all for still doing these. I really appreciated it, and I showed there's another 8th grade science teacher, and I showed her the format last week of the choice board.
Yes.
Told her about the choice and voice, because we have been wanting to do choice boards for a while. So we had decided last year, of course, before everything happened, that this year we were really going to work on choice boards and try to really incorporate those into each unit at least. And then when I showed her that, I was like, and do you see how it's color coded? I was like, it's important because that means there's different ones. And she's like, I didn't even think of that. And I was like, I didn't either until he showed it to me. So
we're glad. We would love that. Our hope was that we had those resources that you all could take and immediately apply to your classroom. So
Yes.
anything, we know how this time is right now. So any way that we can be of assistance or help during this chaos, we are so happy to do so.
it really helped a lot. It's kind of like our book that we have. It's like for a lot of the resources, it takes it so far, but it doesn't like complete it. It'll like start the idea, but then it doesn't like finish it. So to get things like that, that will finish a lot of the ideas, because some of them have like choice assignments on there, but it wasn't necessarily in a format that we could use it digitally.
Right.
Mhm.
So,
Good. Well, we're glad we're able to offer you that.
but yeah, but this has been great. I've really enjoyed it.
Well, thank you so much, Christy. Any other questions or feedback you have for us?
I don't think so. Well, the Padlet thing today, I really like that.
Mhm.
I really
Padlet's a fun tool, and I think I love it because students have that background knowledge of a bulletin board regardless. So like in the way that you post, they're like, oh, wait, this is kind of like this. But they have options to where you can make it into a timeline, or lots of ways that you could use it.
Actually, I was in a training earlier today that used, it wasn't Padlet, but it looked like it, like the way they just had the lessons like laid out.
Uh-huh.
I kind of like the way, like you said, like a timeline with that on there. I thought that was nice.
I think Padlet is going to be a really cool tool for you, since you all are doing the hybrid
Yeah.
virtual learning, because it's going to be a really neat way to build relationships between your in-person and your distance learners, I think.
Yes.
Because they'll all be communicating right there on that one Padlet together. I think that would be a really neat tool for you.
That would. I was thinking today, you know, how do I, you know, involve both groups, but then we do something that's called a social contract. I don't know if you've heard of those on Capturing Kids' Hearts. We do a social contract. So I was like, well, you know, that may look different in person in the classroom, you know, in person than online. Like, I feel like the online would have a little bit of a different, I don't know, a different vibe to it. So I think Padlet could kind of merge both of those to where we could have an understanding, okay, well, if we're in class, this is how we're going to treat each other. Well, we are definitely going to treat each other this way online, but what else do we need to take into consideration?
Right.
Dawn, do you have that norms and etiquette? Isn't there like a norms and etiquette thing that Niswonger has done?
Let me see. Get my thinking. I'll look in my Google Drive and see if I've got anything like that real quick. Okay. Norms and
It
etiquette.
may have been something Gina had shared in one of her sessions this summer.
Okay.
I've seen it somewhere, but I'll try to find that too.
We also have talked about how Padlet is great for teachers to combine their thoughts and combine forces too. So like you can leave something up and have a question, and it's a good way for them to communicate, collaborate. I think it's really good for I've lost what I'm looking for, a brainstorming session. I think it could work for that as well.
I like the way you all had it set up, because you kind of did it with a choice as well.
Mm-hmm.
Each one of them was like its own topic, but then you filled in below it. So you didn't necessarily feel like you had to do like each topic, as long as you got like, you know.
Once again, another way, trying to offer equity in the sense of what resonates with you. You know, what would be more something, you know, because it may not, this possible barrier may not be something that you're going to experience in your classroom.
Right.
You know, and one of yours may be, you have different ages, correct?
No, I've got all 8th grade.
All 8th grade.
We have a lot of language barrier. So sometimes that's something different.
So there's English language learners, yep.
Is it primarily Hispanic speaking students?
It is.
On the etiquette and norms, just thinking about building that social emotional piece and community in a virtual environment. I was at a school today and some teachers were talking about 2 different ways that they did at the beginning of the year, because they've already started. This starts week 4 for them.
Oh, wow.
That they blended a locker, an online locker, and so they got to decorate it however they wanted to online. So I thought that was fun. And then the other one said, well, I know hydro flasks are all the rage right now. So there was one, I mean, neither of them created it. They went online and found it. But
Yeah.
there was a hydro flask one, the water bottles, and you could decorate your own hydro flasks. So silly things like that they said that the kids loved. I remember when I taught 5th grade, it was Visco Girl. Everything was about Visco Girl. And then I had to go home and secretly look that up and be like, what is a Visco Girl? I don't know what it is.
Now, see, one activity we usually do at the beginning of the year, we make the students write their name, their first name, and then they have to give positive attributes or positive descriptions using the letters of their name.
I love that.
Then they have to go through and they have to like draw pictures with it. And I tell them, I said, there's a reason why I teach you science and not art. I said, here's my example. I said, you can tell I teach you science. There's a reason. And I said, it doesn't matter, you know, how well you can draw or anything like that. It just has to be positive, and you have to put this somewhere where you're going to look at it every single day.
So kind of like an acrostic is what I'm thinking of. Yeah.
But yeah.
I always did something with my students called one word. So they chose a word for the year, and we looked at what that word meant and what they aspired to be, and they could decorate it and write it in bubble letters, and we put it on a bulletin board, and we revisited it and made sure, you know, like, are you reaching that goal? Are you being who you want to be? And that was always an activity I did with them. Now, I feel like some teachers have forgotten those beginning of the year activities like Chrissy and I were talking about. They just jumped right into curriculum because, you know, we know there's already gaps. We know last year was such an abrupt end. So like some of that beginning of the year activities where you model and you create that community, and it's different online, but it's definitely powerful, and it can be done.
Yeah, I definitely think it's worth it. We do something, we do a lot of capturing kids' hearts at our school. And so we do good things the first 5 minutes. And there are some classes that if I did not do good things, well, first off, every one of them told me if I forgot it. They always made sure to tell me that I forgot to do good things. But some of them, if you didn't do good things, I mean, the other 55 minutes, you can forget it. Like they weren't going to do it. They were done. So those beginning of the year relationship building activities, they're so important.
I agree.
You can't expect them to work or do anything for you if they don't care.
It sets the tone, definitely, I feel.
And I think a lot of teachers are forgetting that still applies to distance learners.
Yeah.
It's much harder to build those relationships. You know, like in my district in Jefferson County, you can't have your video on. Your cameras have to be off for a Teams meeting. And, you know, so they're really having to be creative because they can't see or really talk to their name. Do what? I'm sorry?
You can't put a face with the name.
You cannot. So, yeah, but that relationship piece is something we are missing this year in my county.
And honestly, I think it's probably more important this year than ever because, you know, if they're like
feeling so isolated.
March, yeah, like you need some human interaction.
Oh, John found the etiquette and norms. You are awesome, John.
I think I did. Christy, it'll require you to, when you click on the link, it'll require you to log into your Google account, and then you can make a copy of it. And that way you'll have a copy of the document. Okay?
Make a copy.
Yeah. It should allow you to make your own copy when you click on the link. Yeah.
I believe I have. Let me check my.
Then you can put it wherever you want to put it on your Google Drive or whatever. That's what's supposed to happen.
Yes, I believe it did.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for that.
Well, thank you so much, Christy. Any last thoughts?
I don't think so. Just thank you for doing this. I've really appreciated it and learned a lot, and I look forward to the 29th.
Oh, yeah, girl.
I know.
We'll be thinking of you as you start your school year.
Thank you. We come back tomorrow, and then the kids come back Tuesday.
Well, feel free to reach out.
Definitely.
Please do. All right. Thank you so much.
Enjoy
Thank
your
you.
evening.
Thanks, you too.
We'll see
Bye.
everybody.
Bye.
Yeah.